Welcome to the Body Map Explainer, unlocking the secrets within. Here, every heartbeat, every breath tells a story of life. Discover the intricate map of your body.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating text that takes a deep dive into the human taste system. We're going to be journeying from the microscopic world of molecular biology all the way up to the philosophy of intelligent design. The source we're looking at today takes a pretty unique approach. It blends physiological science with a creationist perspective to explain exactly how, and more importantly, why we taste our food.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1, the anatomy of human taste, 2, the molecular machinery of flavor, 3, the brain and nervous system, 4, integration with other senses, 5, purpose, protection, and provision, and 6, the case for design. Let's jump right in.
All right, part 1, the anatomy of human taste, which, as the source describes, is way more than just the tongue. Think about it for a second. Why do you crave a bag of salty chips or a really rich dessert? Well, the source highlights these 5 basic tastes, and it points out that each one is actually tuned to a strict physiological requirement. Sweet flavors point us to energy-dense carbohydrates. Sourness acts as an alert for acidity or potential spoilage. Salty flavors signal essential electrolytes we need to function. Bitter flavors, those act as an absolutely crucial warning system against potential toxins. And umami signals protein. The source argues these aren't just random sensory experiences we happen to have, but purposeful alignments meant for human survival.
Now, to actually detect those flavors, your tongue uses these distinct little housing structures called papillae, and the text argues they are meticulously positioned. For instance, we have fungiform papillae right at the front for quick energy detection and foliate on the sides. But look at the circumvallate papillae at the very back of the tongue. The source describes these as sort of an ultimate security checkpoint. They are highly sensitive to bitterness, specifically to weed out poisons right before they can make their way down your throat.
Okay, here's a crazy number for you. 10. Have you ever burned your tongue on a really hot cup of coffee and wondered how it heals so incredibly fast? It's because the receptor cells inside your taste buds actually regenerate entirely every 10 to 14 days. The text cites this rare, super rapid regenerative ability as evidence of a highly efficient built-in renewal system designed for robustness rather than just a random evolutionary process.
Moving right along to part 2, the molecular machinery of flavor. Basically, the hidden factories inside your mouth.
Take umami, for example. That rich, savory taste you get from compounds like glutamate. We aren't just broadly tasting savory. Our bodies are actually using super-specific, fine-tuned genetic receptors, specifically the TAS1R1 and TAS1R3 receptors, to hunt down essential amino acids. The source interprets the extreme specificity of these receptors as a deliberate calibration, carefully designed to meet human dietary needs.
And when a flavor molecule, or a tastant, actually hits that receptor, it kicks off a lightning-fast molecular cascade. It's like a biological domino effect. The tastant binds to a G-protein-coupled receptor, which immediately activates the enzyme PLC-beta-2. That releases a sudden flood of calcium ions, ultimately firing an electrical signal right through the TRPM5 channel. The author argues that the interaction of these very specific proteins, enzymes, and ion channels is simply way too coordinated and irreducibly complex to be the result of undirected evolutionary processes.
You really see the delicacy of this whole balance when it breaks down. The text points to disorders like dysgeusia, which literally distorts how things taste to you. If that molecular cascade gets disrupted, it strips the joy entirely out of eating, leading to severe physical and mental impacts, including malnutrition and even deep depression. For the author, proving how absolutely vital this biological machinery is for human joy and well-being really underlines a deliberate, fragile design.
Which brings us to part 3, the brain and nervous system, and how these senses are actually wired.
So the text details how these electrical signals travel from the mouth to the brain via 3 distinct cranial nerves. You've got the facial nerve handling the front 2/3 of the tongue, the glossopharyngeal nerve for the back third, and the vagus nerve covering the throat. All these signals converge at the brainstem and then travel right up to the gustatory cortex, and that is where taste is consciously perceived.
But it doesn't just stop at simple perception. Crucially, these pathways also route straight into the limbic system, specifically the amygdala and hypothalamus. The source puts a massive emphasis on this link, connecting flavor directly to your memories, your emotions, and pleasure.
According to the text, this is a deliberate design to ensure we don't just consume fuel like machines, but that we actually experience deep joy and emotional connection with our food. All right, part 4. Integration with other senses, or what we can call a symphony of flavor. The source gives this really helpful comparison between taste and smell. Think of it like this. Taste relies on saliva to dissolve molecules in liquid so we can detect basic nutritional cues, while smell uses mucus to catch a massive array of complex odorants suspended in the air. But they partner up perfectly to create flavor. The text argues that this tandem operation, evaluating our environment for both danger, like smoke or rot, and reward, illustrates how both systems intimately work together to enhance our enjoyment of the world around us.
And get this, even temperature plays a totally precise role. Remember that TRPM5 ion channel we talked about earlier in the molecular cascade? Well, at a molecular level, the TRPM5 channel is highly sensitive to heat, which beautifully explains why something like melted ice cream tastes way sweeter than frozen ice cream. The source views this intricate interplay between taste and temperature as a system designed specifically to maximize our sensory experiences.
Moving on to Part 5. Purpose, Protection, and Provision, looking at the broader cultural impact.
The author emphasizes here that taste goes way, way beyond mere survival. It actually builds cultural identity and traditions. It fosters community through shared meals. It even reflects some pretty incredible genetic adaptability. Take super tasters, for instance. These are individuals with a genetic variation that makes them highly sensitive to bitter toxins. The source frames this heightened sensitivity almost like an adaptive superpower, a built-in mechanism for survival and environmental stewardship across different climates and diets.
And that leads us to our final section, Part 6, the case for design, where biology really meets philosophy.
Throughout the text, the author draws a really sharp contrast between two worldviews, where an evolutionary perspective looks at the origin of these receptors and systems and sees random mutations and natural selection. The creation science perspective, championed by this source, sees intentional design. They view the specificity, the redundancy of toxin receptors, and our profound capacity for joy as evidence of deliberate foresight and purposeful engineering by a creator.
To back up this philosophical framework, the author actually brings in biblical references, like this quote from Psalm 34, verse 8, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." The source makes the argument that our physical ability to taste was intentionally designed as a metaphor for spiritual experience, gratitude, and divine provision.
Ultimately, the source concludes that the entire human gustatory system reflects a perfect harmony of molecular interactions, cultural practices, and, in their view, divine orchestration. For the author, it is a masterpiece of sensory integration that points firmly away from randomness and directly toward intentionality, asking the reader to view science as a way to appreciate a much deeper purpose to human existence.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, the source leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to chew on. If the simple, everyday act of tasting is this profoundly complex, finely tuned for both survival and joy, what other hidden biological marvels might hold a deeper, intentional purpose just waiting to be explored? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next explainer.